Welcome to this Prepare for IELTS video, in which we're going to show you the strategies you need to deal with an explanation plus opinion question. These questions are quite common, so it's good to know how to deal with them. So let's start by showing you the strategy that we recommend. Your introduction will be quite similar to other introductions in that you might start with a general comment on the general topic and maybe saying why the general topic is important. You may then paraphrase the question. Obviously, here you have two questions, so it may be that you paraphrase both questions, and then you'll have a thesis statement connected to both questions if possible. It can include your opinion for the second part, or just your plan to deal with it, and you'll see some examples of thesis statements. The main body, well, there are two paragraphs, one really for each question. So in the first main body paragraph, you have an explanation for the first question, and in the second one, you're going to describe and explain your opinion for that second question. Try to link your opinion to the explanation in the previous paragraph in some way. And then in the conclusion, you might reiterate your explanation for question one, repeat your position for question two, maybe recap support for your position for question two, and you might include a hope, a wish, a fear, a worry, or a prediction which supports your position. This sort of strategy is very useful when you can separate the essay into two distinct parts. So answers to problem and solution questions are quite similar. Answers to explanation plus explanation questions are quite similar as well. Let's have a look at an example. Nearly all of us would like to be successful. Why is success so difficult to define? To what extent is our ability to succeed in life controlled by our genetic makeup? You can see there are two questions here. One is clearly asking you to explain. The second one, you could treat it as an explanation, or you can treat it as asking for your opinion. Let's look at how we can deal with this question. So firstly, we have the introduction, and you can start your essay with a very general comment about the topic rather than referring to the specific question. If you do this, it can make your introduction a bit long, especially if you go on to paraphrase the question, but it's a nice way to get your essay going. And it's often possible to paraphrase both questions while explaining that they are difficult to answer, or explaining that they are important, or that they affect a lot of people. So this can be in your thesis statement, but you can have information in the middle of your introduction where you paraphrase the questions and you say why they are important or why they need to be answered. And if you do that, then you can use your thesis statement just to indicate that you plan to answer the questions. So what can you do with your thesis statement? Well, firstly, you can use it just to indicate that you plan to answer these questions. Secondly, you can use it to indicate that these questions are important, and in that case, you probably paraphrase the questions. And thirdly, you can use it to give your opinion. Don't forget that the second part of this essay asks for your opinion, so you could give your position in your thesis statement. Moving on to the first main paragraph, and you need to use your first main body paragraph to answer the first question. The topic sentence offers a clear answer to this first question. So it says, the principal reason why this concept is so tricky to understand is that success implies very different things to different people. And then everything else in this paragraph supports that topic sentence. So you've essentially got four things. They're all supporting the topic sentence. That's a really nicely constructed paragraph. On to the second main body paragraph, and we need to use this to answer the second question. We've got a topic sentence and it offers a clear answer. indicating that both genetic and environmental factors matter. And in a two-part question, you probably only have one paragraph to put forward your position. So often it's simpler to completely support or completely oppose the question statement. We haven't done that here because in a nature-nurture question, we feel it's important to put forward a position which supports both views. But generally, it might be easier to fully support one view or fully support the other view because you don't have much space. You only have one paragraph to put forward your position. So in this paragraph, we need to support both genetic and environmental influences because that's our position in the thesis statement, and you can see we've just got half a paragraph for each of those, and by putting information about both of those, we very nicely support the topic sentence and support the position that we've indicated. Moving on to the conclusion, and you can start it with a general comment which connects to both questions if possible. In the conclusion, you can refer back to your answers for both questions. Again, connecting the two questions is always a good idea, and you can see that we've done that in most of the conclusion. Most of the conclusion refers back to both questions and links them. And finally, you can often finish with a comment or a prediction about the future, ending your essay with a hope, a wish, some kind of prediction, or even a worry or fear related to what you've written in the essay can be a real strength. Let's look at another essay and answer it using a similar strategy. So many people around the world give money to charities which support older or weaker members of society. Why do people choose to give money to charities? And would it be better if governments increased taxes to pay for the elderly and vulnerable instead of relying on charities? And you can see there are two questions there. The first one clearly asks you to explain. The second one asks for your opinion. Let's see how we will answer this one. So, beginning with a general comment which introduces the issue is often a good idea. And you can refer to both questions in your thesis statement. So here we've got the questions of why we choose to give our hard-earned cash to those organizations and whether there are more effective ways of helping the needy remain unanswered. So saying that the questions remain unanswered, saying that they need to be addressed, saying that they are important, are all things that you can include in your thesis statement. You can paraphrase the two questions and you can say they are important, and that's a perfectly good thesis statement. You have the other option to indicate that you will answer them, and the other option to actually include your position. So what is your opinion on the second question? Turning to the first main paragraph, and this paragraph answers the first question with a list, and the first item from this list is in the topic sentence. So this is slightly unusual, but quite a nice way to form your paragraph. So this topic sentence is, if asked, most members of the public would probably explain that they make donations in order to do good. So we've put forward our first explanation. The reason why we give money is to do good. And this topic sentence also makes it clear that this paragraph deals with the first question. So it's quite an unusual topic sentence in that it tells us what the paragraph is about, and it also provides us with the first answer. There's more that we can do, so we can indicate that this first answer which you gave is not complete. So the doing good explanation is not a full explanation. And in the rest of the paragraph, we can add extra points to the list. This is the list which answers the first question. So reasons why people give money to charity. And you can see that we've done that here. We can support points with explanation or evaluation. So sometimes you can just make a point in a list paragraph. Some list paragraphs might have 3 main points and no explanation. Some might have 3 main points and 1 point explained. Some might have 2 main points, both of which are explained. So when you write a paragraph like this, if you include more points, it's harder to support these points. But remember that the points themselves are supporting the topic sentence. So you do have support, so your grade for task response is going to be good. This explanation is quite strong for another reason, and that's because it connects to the answer for the second question. So here we've got that they are likely to support groups which care for children and animals, and probably unwilling to help less beautiful groups like the mentally ill, the housebound, and famine victims in far-off lands. So this idea about charity donations not really being effective is taken up in the next paragraph. Anytime you link 2 paragraphs, it's a strength. So let's move on to this second main paragraph now. And in the second main paragraph, obviously, we need to answer the second question. And by referring to the fact that charity funding fails, we are connecting to the final point in the previous paragraph, the one that we just looked at now. So connecting paragraphs, a real strength. You can support your position by explaining how your suggestion would work. So that's what we're doing here. And we can put forward other arguments to support a position, and also evaluate arguments to show why they are strong. Moving on to the conclusion, and you can start a conclusion by restating your position for the second question. This works very well if you've connected your answers to the 2 questions. You can make a comment connected to your answer to the first question, and this is stronger if you have managed to link the 2 answers. And finally, you can end with a hope or a wish, and can even comment on your own hope or wish. So a nice way of ending your essay. We'll look at one more just to give another example of how to answer this type of question. These days, there are many families around the world where both parents work full-time and spend much less time with their children than they would like to. Why does this happen? Is it a problem? You can see the 2 questions, the opinion question and the explanation question, which comes first. So why does this happen is asking you to explain something. Is it a problem? Is asking what you think about it. So let's start our introduction with a general comment about the topic. So your first sentence can be a comment on the general topic, not really on the specific question. It's often good to explain how the situation has changed or stayed the same. You can also comment on how serious this issue is, how much it affects people. So there are lots of things you can say about the general topic. You can paraphrase the question statement, often a very good idea to do that. And while you're paraphrasing, you can say how it's important or how it affects many people. And you can make a comment to explain that this is a serious issue. Again, a good thing to do in the introduction, though be careful. As you can see, this introduction now is quite long. That's absolutely fine if you've got time to finish the essay. So you need to bear in mind that you only have 40 minutes. And if you spend too long on your introduction, then this might affect your ability to complete the answer. Finally, in the introduction, we've got a thesis statement, and this can indicate your plan to answer both questions or your position for the second question. So you can do one of those things with your thesis statement. First main body paragraph, and use this to answer the first question. You can start with a topic sentence which indicates the focus of your answer. So here we're saying that the principal reason for this phenomenon is clearly economic. So we know that everything in this paragraph will be economic. But that's very general, and so we need to add some explanation to say specifically what our argument is about. We can use evidence from the world to support the argument, and we can also refer to results to support our argument. So if you're not sure about what you can use to support main points in main paragraphs, then look at our video on paragraphs. It goes through all the options. Turning now to the second main body paragraph, and of course we're using that to answer the second question, the opinion question. And you can completely support or oppose a position, but here we're using a clause of concession with although, and we're using that to indicate that even the position that we generally disagree with has some merit. So I said earlier that the safest thing to do with the opinion part of these questions is to completely agree or completely disagree. But if you can put forward a position where you generally agree with something but not completely, then this is very sophisticated. This can be really strong. You can add explanation to support your position, as we've done here. And turning to the conclusion, and we can comment on the situation, again being careful not to say exactly the same thing as we might have said in the introduction. You can restate your position, so you can explain your position to the second question, the opinion question. And you can end with a wish or a hope or a suggestion connected to your position. That's often a good thing to do. So we hope that you found that useful, and if you get a two-part question, especially explanation plus opinion, but also explanation plus explanation, or indeed any two-part question, then we hope you will now have the strategies to deal with it. We look forward to seeing you soon, and thank you for watching.